I never planned to speak about ADX Florence. For years, I thought silence was safer, until the silence itself started talking back. I remember the morning they moved me here. The bus windows were blacked out, the air thin as we climbed into the Rockies. No one spoke. You could feel the fear breathing inside every chainman, steady as the hum of the engine. When the driver killed the lights, the world outside vanished. A voice from the front said only 4 words, "You don't look out." I kept my eyes on my cuffs, steel against skin, colder than the mountain air seeping through the cracks. Somewhere behind me, a man whispered a prayer. The guard slammed his baton once on the floor. Silence again. We rolled through a final gate, and I caught my first glimpse of it. Concrete against sky, angles sharp enough to cut light itself. No color, no noise, no life. Just a fortress built to erase human sound. That's ADX Florence, the place where the government sends men it wants the world to forget. They processed us like inventory. Numbers, fingerprints, eyes scanned, shoes taken. The hallway smelled of bleach and dust. I remember the guard's voice, flat and rehearsed. "You'll speak when spoken to. You'll move when told." Then came the door, solid steel, window the size of a postcard. When it shut, the echo carried through the walls like thunder rolling through stone. My cell was 8 steps long, for wide. Stainless steel sink, concrete bed, small slot where food would appear. No view, just a slit of sky that looked more like a scratch than freedom. The walls hummed. At first, I thought it was the air system. Later, I realized it was my heartbeat bouncing off concrete. Hours passed, or days, I couldn't tell. The light never changed, only dimmed for a moment before glowing again. The first meal slid through the slot, something gray on a tray, steamless. I ate it because hunger made time move slower. When I finished, I counted every crack in the floor, every mark on the wall. It became a ritual. Count enough times, and you start to believe the numbers mean something. At night, the quiet pressed down until it hurt. I could hear my own breath, my own pulse, the metal expanding with the cold. That's when the memories came, the courtroom, the headlines, the faces of people I'd wronged. I wondered if they were sleeping easier knowing I'd been buried alive in this box. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a sound, a faint tap, rhythmic like fingers on glass. I held my breath, listening. Then it stopped. I told myself it was the pipes, maybe the building settling. But as I leaned closer to the vent near my bed, I heard it again. Top, top, pause, top. And then a whisper carried through the metal, so soft I almost believed I imagined it. It said my name. They tell you ADX is the most secure prison in America. What they don't tell you is that security isn't just about locks and walls. It's about control. Total, invisible control. You don't move, eat, or even breathe without permission. It's not punishment, it's precision. Every morning starts the same. A slot in the door opens at exactly 6 a.m., and a tray slides through. The guard never speaks. I used to try catching his reflection in the small glass panel, just to see a human face, but all I ever saw were boots and gloves. You eat in silence, you shower in silence, you think in silence. The sound of the door closing becomes your clock, your heartbeat, your only measure of time. The guards here have a rhythm, like machines built for one purpose. They never make eye contact. Every command comes from behind a wall, a speaker, or a shield. One word, step back, and you move 3 paces away from your own door, hands raised, eyes down. I learned quickly, obedience keeps the air in your lungs. The cameras watch every inch. Even when you sleep, there's a lens fixed on your body. Once a week, they give you an hour outside, if you can call it that. It's a small concrete pen with bars overhead. No view of the horizon. Just sky cut into pieces. The first time I walked out there, I turned my head and saw another cage a few yards away. A man was pacing inside, muttering numbers under his breath. When our eyes met, a guard shouted, "Face forward." I never saw him again. In ADX, the guard are ghosts, and the walls are alive. Every sound carries, footsteps, coughs, keys, and the building itself seems to breathe with you. The intercom clicks on randomly, even when no one speaks. Some say it's a malfunction. Others think it's a test. I stopped guessing. You learn not to ask questions here. Questions make them notice you. By the second month, I knew their system by heart. Every 15 minutes, a light blinked red outside my door, the wellness check. They call it safety, but it's surveillance. They track your sleep, your reactions, your silence. It's not to keep you alive. It's to remind you that you're theirs. One guard, I never learned his name, had a pattern. Tap twice on the door before opening it. I started timing him, memorizing the steps, the sound of his keys. Once, he dropped a paper slip near the door, something small and yellow. I reached for it after he left, but the door camera flashed, and an alarm blared. Two guards appeared in seconds, faces hidden behind visors. They told me to back up, hands on the wall. No explanation, no punishment, just a message. We saw you. That was when I understood the real power here. It's not the bars or the guns. It's the uncertainty. They control what you know, what you hear, what you feel. They control the idea of freedom itself. You start to measure your sanity in rules followed and words swallowed. Some nights, I'd hear the guards talking faintly over the radios, using codes I couldn't decipher. They spoke about movement shifts and section sweeps. One night, I heard my own cell number, 32B, then silence. A few minutes later, the lights flickered, and I heard boots outside my door. They didn't open it. They just stood there, listening, testing me. The air felt colder after that. The next morning, my tray came later than usual. Inside, the food was untouched, but a folded note lay beneath the bread. I froze. No one sends notes in ADX. I looked up at the camera. Its light was off. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt unseen. I opened the paper slowly. 3 words were written in neat, shaky letters. You're not alone. And then the intercom clicked back on. The note stayed under my mattress for days before I dared to read it again. You're not alone. 3 words, but in ADX, they meant everything. I didn't know if it was hope or bait. Nothing enters this prison by accident. Every meal, every sheet, every screw in the wall is accounted for. So how does a handwritten note slip past cameras and guards? I started watching the patterns again. The routines I'd memorized suddenly felt different, off by seconds. The lights that once blinked red every 15 minutes now pulsed unevenly. Someone was altering the rhythm, either a mistake or a message. That week, a new guard appeared. He was quieter, slower, with a limp that made his steps easy to track. The first day, he said nothing. The second, when sliding the tray through, he tapped the door once. That wasn't protocol. Tap twice means approach, once means stop. My pulse spiked. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was him. Each day, I tested it. He came at the same time, but never looked through the slot. One morning, I whispered a single word when he passed. Why? He didn't answer, but paused just long enough to tell me he'd heard. That silence said more than words ever could. By the end of the week, I noticed something else. Cell 34B across the tier had gone dark. No lights, no movement. The inmate there, a quiet man I only knew by his cough, was suddenly gone. No announcement, no transfer notice. Just gone. I remember the night before it happened. Faint knocks through the vent, slow and deliberate. The same rhythm I'd heard from the guard's footsteps. 2 knocks, pause, 1 knock. Over and over. A code. I began to listen. Every night, when the building sank into silence, the vents came alive. Soft hums, metal clicks, distant whispers that echoed like ghosts. I pressed my ear to the wall until I could make out patterns. Not words, but sequences. 3 clicks. Pause. 2 knocks. It was a language of survival passed through concrete. The more I listened, the more I realized ADX wasn't just a prison. It was a system designed to erase connection, yet somehow connection still existed. Invisible but alive. Somewhere beyond my cell, others were communicating, mapping routines, sharing fragments of truth the cameras couldn't see. One morning, my tray came with something new, a folded paper napkin. At first glance, nothing unusual, but when I pressed it against the light, faint impressions appeared, the outline of a key drawn in graphite. And below it, a set of numbers, July 14th, 32. Coordinates? Cell numbers? I didn't know, but I memorized them before flushing the napkin away. Days turned into weeks. I stopped marking the walls for time. I marked them for patterns. The light blinks, guard steps, intercom clicks. They formed a map. I realized the cameras in certain corridors turned slightly every hour, creating brief blind spots. Not long, 5, maybe 6 seconds, but enough for something or someone to move unseen. I thought about the missing man from 34B. What if he wasn't gone, just moved, hidden inside the system itself? The next time the intercom crackled, I caught a voice between the static. Not the usual commands. This was softer, human. A single sentence buried in the noise. Don't trust the schedule. I froze. The prison's routine was law. Predictable, absolute. If that schedule was a lie, it meant someone was rewriting the order of ADX from the inside. That night, I waited. The guard with the limp came late. 10 minutes past his usual time. I pressed close to the door slot. He slipped a folded photo through with my tray. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was grainy, like a surveillance still, a hallway with no inmates, no guards, but a door marked sublevel C. I'd never heard of it. ADX doesn't have a sublevel on record. At least, not one visible to the prisoners. Behind the photo was another note. Follow the lights. One will blink twice. From then on, I counted every flicker in my cell. Hours passed. Then, on the third night, I saw it, the overhead light blinking twice, faintly, at 2:17 a.m. I stood there, waiting, listening to the hum through the vent. Then came the sound again. 2 knocks. Silence. 1 knock. Someone was there, on the other side of the wall, guiding me. That's when I realized this wasn't about escape. It was about exposure. Someone inside ADX wanted the truth out. Maybe an insider. Maybe a ghost from the system. I looked up at the camera. The red light that always watched me was off again. No power flicker this time. It had been cut. For the first time since my arrival, I whispered into the darkness. I'm listening. The intercom hissed softly, and a low voice answered. Then don't stop. They said ADX Florence was built with only one purpose, to make men disappear without ever killing them. By now, I knew that wasn't a rumor. It was policy. Every movement, every word, every breath was monitored. Yet, even inside this fortress, there were whispers of something deeper, a part of the prison not listed on any blueprint. They called it the sublevel. The first time I heard that word, it came from the vent again. The voice was weaker this time, rasping through static like a dying signal. They took him under, it said. Just those 3 words. Then silence. I tried to reply, but my voice vanished into the metal grate. The next day, the voice never came back. Days blurred again. Lights at 6 a.m., meals through the slot, the same concrete pattern, counting time in a place that had none. But then something shifted. The guards, usually mechanical in their movements, began working in pairs, whispering more, carrying unmarked boxes down the east corridor near my cell block. No one ever came back through that door. At night, when the facility dimmed, I started noticing the hum beneath the floor, faint, rhythmic, electrical. It was coming from below. Weeks passed before I found a way to ask about it. During a rare medical check, I muttered to a nurse, "What's under the east corridor?" Her eyes flickered for a second. Fear, or maybe guilt. Then she leaned in close enough for me to catch a whisper. "Don't ever ask that again." I didn't. But from that moment, I began to listen differently. Every sound mattered. The low mechanical vibration beneath my feet wasn't just electricity. It pulsed like footsteps. Then, one morning, something unprecedented happened. My cell door didn't open for routine cleaning. Instead, 2 officers appeared with a black hood and restraints. "Security transfer," one said. I wasn't on any list. Transfers didn't exist inside ADX without approval from Washington. But they didn't explain. They never do. They led me down a corridor I'd never seen before. No windows, no cameras, just layers of steel and a single red light above a reinforced door. When it opened, the air was colder, metallic, different. We descended by elevator, down, far below the main floor. The hum grew louder. The space they led me into looked nothing like a prison. It was sterile, white, lined with glass walls, more like a laboratory. Inside one of the rooms, I saw men sitting perfectly still, staring at blank screens. No restraints, no sound, just stillness. Guards stood watching them, recording something on clipboards. When I asked where we were, no one answered. They placed me in a small room, bright, windowless, with a single chair facing a black monitor. For hours, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered on. A grainy video appeared. My own cell, recorded from an angle I'd never seen. I watched myself sleeping, eating, pacing. Days of footage. Then the screen went dark again, replaced by a single sentence. Tell us what you heard through the vent. I froze. They knew. I told them it was just a voice, faint, probably imagination. The screen stayed dark. Then a mechanical voice replied. Cold, synthetic, like an automated recording. We know you're not the first. That's when I realized the voice in the vent wasn't random. It was part of something larger. Someone before me had heard it too. Someone who never made it back to the main levels. Hours passed, or maybe days, before they returned me to my cell. But my cell wasn't the same. The scratches on the wall were gone. The vent was sealed. Even the hum beneath the floor had stopped. Weeks later, I overheard two guards talking outside during meal rotation. One mentioned a containment order, the kind used when inmates vanish without record. The other said quietly, he's the last one. That night, a storm rolled over Florence. The power flickered for the first time in years, plunging the unit into total darkness. When the lights came back, my door was slightly open. Inside the gap was a folded piece of paper. No markings, no handwriting, just one sentence printed neatly in red ink. You were right about the sublevel. The next morning, my cell was empty. At least, that's what the reports say. The official record shows an administrative transfer. No date, no destination, no signature. Weeks later, an internal maintenance team reported unusual power readings beneath ADX, a surge of electricity coming from a section sealed since construction. But when inspectors went to check, they found no door, no wiring, nothing. The inmate's name was erased from the active roster. His belongings were archived, but one audio tape remained in evidence, labeled only with a number, ADX 421. The final seconds of that tape are barely audible. A man's voice whispering beneath static. You can hear him say it just before the sound cuts out completely. There's another floor below this one. They say ADX Florence was built to contain the world's most dangerous minds. But maybe it was built to hide something else. If you think this story was chilling, wait until you see what happens behind the walls they don't talk about. Hit subscribe, tap like, and turn on the bell, because the next story dives even deeper into the prisons where the truth is locked away with the men who lived it. Because in the end, every cell has a secret, and some secrets were never meant to be found. And that's where the recording ends.